I'm Sharon Brett Kelly, and today on The Detail I'm in my kitchen getting my food scraps bin out because it's collection day today, curbside collection. Now I'm just taking it outside and emptying it into the other bin, ready for tipping all my food scraps in. And now if, like me, you thought these food scraps were carted off to somewhere south of Hamilton and dumped on a big compost heap, well, you'd be completely wrong, because they go even further. I'm standing in the middle of Reparoa with Andy Bedford, General Manager of Ecogas, and I'm surrounded by shipping containers. Well, there's a big truck going past us that's just dumped off a load of Auckland's food waste. Andy, tell me about this place.
Yeah, look, Ecogas, we, take food waste full circle is our catch cry. There's a whole raft of unavoidable organic waste, and so that's the waste that comes here to Ecogas. What we do is we take that waste and we process it through something called anaerobic digestion. So this is an enclosed process where a whole lot of microorganisms break down that organic matter and they turn it into some really exciting byproducts. So for us, our bioorganic fertiliser, or our digestate, we call it Fertify, that we spread here on local dairy and sheep and beef farms in the Reparoa village. We generate heat, which we share with turners and growers to heat their glasshouses. We generate bio-CO2, so that's the CO2 that we take off our biomethane. So biomethane is made up of CO2 and methane. Once we separate that through our upgrading process, that CO2 is shared, or soon to be shared, with turners and growers. Which
Your neighbour?
Yeah, our neighbour. And our landlord, because we lease the land from them. And then the last part of that is the methane content left in that biomethane that's brought up to pressure, that's cleaned up, and it is injected into national gas infrastructure. So that pipeline is just off our back fence, and that pipeline is connected in North Island to all the gas network, but it physically supplies the Taupō Reparoa region.
I'm with a group of eco-ambassadors on a tour of the Reparoa plant, smack bang in the middle of the North Island. It's the first of its kind. Andy's rolling up the door to what they call the reception hall, where the trucks dump the waste.
All of the organics, whether it's got packaging or not, goes in there. The attritters then separate the organics from the packaging. All of our contamination you can see across to the right here, and then everything else is turned into a slurry and heads across into our tank farm. You would be shocked at what we receive through here from Auckland curbside. We get denim jeans, we've had a butane gas bottle, like the little cookie ones. Just at the end of last year we had about 20 bits of metal about this big chucked in to council curbside, which caused probably about $65,000 worth of damage. So as you can see in that pile there, try and pick a piece of metal the size of a 30cm ruler, good luck, you just can't see it. All of the liquid that you, like the stuff you can see on the ground here now, goes back into our own system and we use it. We don't waste a drop of liquid because we want it for our process. Just get back a little bit.
This is a good news story, but it's not a perfect story. Because for New Zealand to be winning the war against landfill, we need dozens of these plants. We've just got this one. On top of that, the government's just cancelled a compulsory scheme to roll out council food scraps collections across the country. Also, the Auckland collections are only at half the expected levels. But before we hear more about this $30 million plant and why Andy compares it to Rocket Lab, let's go back to the start of our day in Auckland.
Kia ora.
I'm on a bus with church leaders, eco-volunteers, youth group leaders and our tour guide Andrew Fisher, a founder and part owner of Ecogas.
Rightio guys, from here we're going to about 15 minutes in the bus to Ecogas's SCF. Nearly 14 years of work to get to this point. I started Eco Stock back in 2007, which is the founding business behind Ecogas. I guess in ways I look at it as a bit of a competition and a bit of a source of pride. Ireland, 28% of their energy is now from renewable gas. Wow. Okay, Denmark is over 50% and heading towards 100%. Okay, we have about 100 landfills. Ireland only has about 4. Okay, But Ireland has 48 Ecogas sites, and we've got 1. Okay, we're winning the wrong competitions. But understand when you're talking to people that this is not the only solution. Like we as culture and everyone, we want to put some dignity into what we do. So there's still, good home cooking, freezing stuff, but ultimately corn cobs, other products do need another solution other than just landfill. What most people don't realise is what you're visiting today, I own 15% of it, but the other 85% is owned by the Community Trust of Central Otago. This is a community trust that owns this solution. Okay, so when you look at the rubbish bins in Auckland, the income and the benefits from the big bin goes overseas, from the yellow bin it goes overseas. This little food waste bin, everything that we make stays in New Zealand. There's a lot of composting places around the place. My wife's English, so I went to England, caught up with some composting operations over there, and they were moving away from composting and into what we call anaerobic digestion. Why? Because compost, you produce compost. Anaerobic digestion, you'll see today, we produce electricity, bio-CO2, fertiliser, worm meal feed, electricity, hot water. In total we produce 9 products. 9 products from a resource. Why I've wanted you guys on this bus trip is we want more from Auckland Council though.
Yeah.
We would love Auckland Council to be a champion globally. But the first journey was actually for you guys to come and see it for yourself, because it's very hard to actually push something that you're not quite sure of. And please just keep asking questions today, because as I said, I was in the army for 14 years and I've been asked every dumb question there is.
Just leave our bags.
Yep, leave your bags. Yep.
Our first stop is a big shed in Papakura where Auckland's food scraps are dropped for sorting before they're trucked off to Reparoa. As we head inside, I talk to some of the group.
I'm from CNSST Foundation. So
What's
we have
that?
Chinese New Settlers Services Trust. The reason I'm being here is because we are helping Auckland Council to promoting food scrap services, and I'm also one of the eco ambassadors in CNSST. So that's a good opportunity to come here, have a look at what's the food wastage is going to, and then how they generate the energy.
It's always fascinating when you get a lot of what we would call waste together, is what about pests? I think it's one of the obstacles to people for collecting their food scraps as well.
What kind of message will you take back to the people that you deal with from this day out?
There aren't pest problems around these facilities, even though they're processing massive amounts. So really that's around just the proper use of those bins, and can actually help reduce the pest problems at home by having the waste in the right place.
My name is Iki Pope, and I'm from Tonga Youth Trust. Also, I work for the Methodist Church of New Zealand as a presbyter. And the reason why I'm here, I do believe that this work is very, very important for our community, especially for the next generation. The Pacific community, they have to learn a lot more about food scrap, and also how the food scrap develop like this one.
In your community, do you have any idea of how many people are putting out their food scrap bins?
It's not really much in my view, because they are not really understand.
Is it understanding?
It's a kind of understanding of like the mentality, change the behavior or something like that, to understand how to differentiate the rubbish for the red bin and the food scrap, and have an effort to separate it.
So what kind of message are you going to take back to your community from today?
Well, I will put it in my sermon.
At your next sermon this weekend?
I will.
Inside the shed, Andrew Fisher is showing us a machine that breaks up commercial food waste, like giant slabs of chocolate.
That's all the fats out of McDonald's. That used to go down our drains. They used to go to water care. Okay?
What, the fat?
What's that?
The fat from food.
Yeah, fat. The reality is, we have high health, high hygiene, high expectations of our food industry. And to do that, they keep doing samples. Okay? So remember, New Zealand actually exports food for 40 million people. We are a big exporter of food. So when you are having to retain samples of 1%, it's a lot. But when your story is that those samples go to landfill, you have no point of difference. When in Ireland, they have this anaerobic digestion. Europe has over 9,000 plants. They come to New Zealand thinking we've already got it, got one. This used to all go to landfill. Okay, all went to landfill. The packaging you'll see come off at Reparar, okay, have a guess how much the packaging, total weight of packaging is. Most days it's only 2 tonne. 2% is actually plastic contamination. It gets as high as say 8%. But if I got 98% in the exam, I'd be pretty happy. Yeah. So it looks like a lot, but weight-wise, there's nothing.
Back on the road, Andrew tells us why exporters are talking about the Ecogas process to international clients.
This is what they already thought was happening in New Zealand, and it is happening. They do this exact trip. They bring their buyers in from England or Europe, America, Australia, pick them up at the airport, come to this site, and then they go down to take them for a day trip down to Rotorua and Reparar, see a bit of New Zealand, why to buy from New Zealand, and actually this is part of their story to get products overseas. It's about having options. We shouldn't be building another 700 hectare landfill. We spend a lot of time advocating and being activists against mining for gold and mining for everything. Yet at the same time we're digging the biggest holes you've ever seen to put stuff in.
3.5 hours later, we're in Reparar. Andrew points out the surrounding paddocks where the fertiliser that comes from the Aucklanders' food scraps is spread.
They call it fertified. Yes. Have a guess what the locals call it?
What?
Jaffa juice. And they love Jaffa juice. I think it's a good term of endearment, actually.
Just down from Reparar's shops, past the school and the town hall, sits Ecogas. You can see Turners and Growers tomato greenhouses across the paddock and the main gas network just over the back fence. As Ecogas GM Andy Bedford reminds us, they are all connected. But being part of this little township has its challenges.
Did you notice the difference in smell between inside and outside?
Yes.
Yeah, so the scrubber system works really well on this site. Important that not only are we custodians of the land with, through our processing and our reduction in emissions, but also just being good neighbours. It would make my job a lot harder if I was constantly dealing with odour complaints. And look, there's definitely times that an old army saying that the holes in the Swiss cheese line up, and we will get an odour complaint because Broadland School was having an outdoor activity day and then our spreading contractor goes and spreads digestate on the farm closest to the school. Right? There's things outside of my control sometimes that are hard to manage, but every time we identify something like this, we chuck a different step in place so that it doesn't happen again. Any questions on that process?
I just wanted to know what happens to your waste.
Yeah, so waste is a really annoying thing for me. I'd love to say we're zero waste, but we're not. There's no way for us to separate biodegradable packaging and normal packaging.
Yep.
If the volume was greater from Auckland Council,
yep,
I could run a specific line for Auckland Council, and then I could take those bin liners that everyone loves. I could take those bin liners, I could send them to worm farm or composting, but at the moment I can't because the waste is not large enough for us to run independent trucks for Auckland Council and out of Auckland down to here. So every big load that comes in is topped up with commercials or industrial waste because our consent conditions in Auckland mean all waste has to be gone from the site you went to this morning in under 24 hours. The separated step, which I'll show shortly, that's our last chance to take out minor bits of plastics and packaging. Okay. It'd be an incredible soil conditioner, but because of the packaging that's remained in, about 1%, I can't spread it on land. So we are looking at some other options at the moment. There's a really exciting business in the Waikato that's hopefully going to get consent shortly. that we may be able to divert our waste to and it will become zero waste.
As we watch a truck cart away some fertiliser, Andy tells me about the expansion plans.
We process 75,000 tonnes of organics to date, and we're looking at expanding in the future because the demand for this facility is large. We've got room to grow another tank, which will bring our capacity up to 100,000 tonnes of organics a year. So look, I came into the business middle of last year. My background is not anything in the waste sector, nothing to do with energy, but it's pretty hard to not get excited about what we do here. A lot of councils around New Zealand, their organics are just mixed in with their refuse bin. They don't have the ability to separate organics. So that refuse bin goes to landfill. Those organics, every kg of organic that goes to landfill creates 2.1 kgs of CO2 emissions. Whereas if the product comes to Ecogas, the anaerobic digestion that we do is a fully enclosed process, so there's no emissions. It's very, very light level emissions. It's 0.0027 per kg of organics that we receive. And that includes our transport emissions that, for trucking, the backload trucking that we do.
You're reaching capacity, you're expanding, but actually you've only got half the volume out of Auckland's food scraps collection that you expected.
I think it's always hard to look at what the volumes will be of a program that's so new. Look, yes, we have gone out to the commercial space to fill what we thought was going to be the makeup or the volumes, but those volumes are growing, but the council are working really hard to build those. Some really good, just like the groups that you've travelled down with today, some really good community organisations that are really behind the program and are out in those various communities educating people why to use this. Look, a lot of people, there hasn't been a curbside collections process in the past, are used to just putting it in the rubbish bin. And, now I've got a third bin. It's smelly, there's that factor that comes along with curbside. But I've been with the organisation for 8 months and I've already seen increases over time from Auckland Council, and that's only going to continue with the community representation that we have here.
You talked about a rocket lab inside there. It's hard to imagine behind that big grey shed is something that's akin to Rocket Lab.
There's a lot of smarts required for what is actually a really basic process, right? Like inside that reception hall, we pre-process the organics. So that's where through a metal mechanical trommel, we separate packaging from organics, and then the organics are slurried across into our tank farm. But I guess the step you're missing is that that tank farm has got mixing pumps, that's got feeding pumps, that's got oxygen generators, there's big power requirements. All of that on the site is automated. You don't need anyone in that tank farm to run it. We can cross-load and transfer and feed and offload and feed bladders and add water all from home with a laptop. So when you look inside the computer suite here, to me it does look like Rocket Lab because it's incredible to think the power behind what we do, but what that also gives us with the system that we use is really good insights into trend analysis. So what's the volume we fed at this day of this month last year versus now? What's the oxygen level? What's our CO2 methane breakdown? And it gets us to really look as, okay, well, why is that different from January 24 that it is January 25? What's our change in feedstock, so the organic waste that's coming in, has that makeup changed? And that really allows us to sort of deep dive and look at the trends for the site. We run a lean ship, we have 5 people on the site every day, and that, 5 days a week. That's not a lot for a site this size that processes the amount or the volumes that we do. And we can do that through the automation of our tank farm.
On the bus back to Auckland, I ask Andrew Fisher why Auckland's food waste really has to be shipped so far from the city.
You've got to start somewhere. If you tried to build it anywhere north of Hamilton, it would have never been built.
Why?
Just the ground's too soft for some big infrastructure. The community design programs at the moment, getting it into the grid, it would still be going through, consenting, consultation, everything else. We've got a site there that can get insurance, and now we can look to build somewhere else. We need more, and that's one of the reasons for today, is actually get more engagement. We'll get closer to Auckland, but also by down there, we're actually servicing commercial New Zealand, the big exporters.
You said that you need more food from the food scrap bins. Why?
Because whilst Repro is nearly at capacity, if you compare us to Ireland, Denmark or even England and that, it's embarrassing. Our status as a modern country going overseas, if people knew how pathetic we would be embarrassed ourselves. The commercial entities in New Zealand are doing very, very well, but as a society, New Zealanders, we tell the world we're green. Reality is we're greenwashing. And if we're not going to do it in households, why are we going out to the world and asking for a premium on our food and everything else? And I guess I'm shining the light on the king with no clothes. We fight against, separating out plastic and all that. Whereas other countries, if they had the resources we had, would go to the nth degree. They separate out 9 different waste streams. Brutally, we're arrogant. If you're a European country and you saw what we do, you just call us arrogant Kiwis.
What is the volume of food that's coming out of Auckland?
Good question. I think it's about 27,000 tonne a year.
You thought it would be double that by now, didn't you?
I think the expectation was to get there. I just had to say to people, told you so. And everyone else was like, oh, we'll just put the bins out and Kiwis will get into it. I was like, no, they won't. No, they won't. It'll take more than just one simple marketing message to get people on board.
So what does it mean that this government has basically cancelled the plan to roll out food scrap bins all over the country and make it mandatory?
It means that they've listened to the 1%. The government of today is talked about, wanting to tackle waste. Yeah, but they look at it in a business, wasteful spending of government departments, where reality is a spotlight. They just own gold themselves. The government themselves have just had an opportunity to tidy up waste in New Zealand in the literal, the factual term, and they haven't addressed it. They didn't realise that we're only 5 million people. Standardisation allows us to do things across New Zealand. New Zealand's 60 councils, 60 different systems, they're all looking to government for a bit of a level playing field. If the government sets a level playing field, we all have the same costs, we're into it. But you have some councils going, no, I'll save money by doing this. There's no certainty. Certainty allows investment, and through investment, councils can come up with things of innovation. What the government's doing is flip-flopping.
Has it hurt you? Has it hurt your business?
No.
Oh.
It's because we're established. It's hurt every other business that wants to get into this area, and it's hurt New Zealand Inc., and it's hurt other companies that want to, grow on the back of our reputation.
What's your goal? I think you said you've got 162 manufacturers on board.
Yep.
You've got Auckland Council, and there's a contract.
And Christchurch Council, yep.
And Christchurch Council contract. Plenty of room for growth. Do you want the whole country?
I think the ultimate thing is, and that people don't understand, is that this business, Ecogas, is ultimately owned by the Community Trust of Central Otago. And so the answer is yes, would I like New Zealand charity to own and have New Zealand under its wing, yes. And I'd love to see at least 5 more plants, and I'd love it to stay in the New Zealand ownership model, so that we can prove the world. And like what we've done with yachts and rugby, love New Zealand to be a global best practice at what we're doing here.
I should point out that while the government has scrapped the mandatory curbside food waste scheme, councils and private companies can apply for up to 40% of a project which diverts waste from landfills. That's all for today. The Detail is produced by Newsroom and supported by RNZ and NZ On Air. This episode was engineered by William Saunders and produced by Gwen McClure. Thanks to Andrew Fisher and Andy Bedford. I'm Sharon Brett Kelly. Ka kite.